sometimes the temporary things are becoming the most stable things.
And coincidences are usually not by accident. Improving the public trust, which has the lowest level ever. We have 25% of trust.
In Bulgaria, even less. How did the general public react to the movie?
They protested. We can speak about it on social media platforms. We can go out and protest. But the most important thing, we should go and vote.
Dear listeners, welcome to the 6th episode of the podcast of Bulgarian Institute for Legal Initiatives called Through the Labyrinths of Law. We have the honor and the pleasure today to talk with Andrea-Anamaria Chiș. She's a former judge who has served for more than 28 years within the Romanian judiciary, and she holding various positions at all jurisdictional levels. And she has also been a member of the Superior Council of the Magistracy in Romania from 2017 and until 2023. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you very much for inviting me. For me, it's an honor and a pleasure as well to be here with you today.
Ms. Chiș was invited by Billy to participate in a conference we had under the motto Independence and Effectiveness of the Judiciary in a situation of expired mandates, because in Bulgaria, unfortunately, we have a Supreme Judicial Council that operates outside its mandate for a couple of years now, as well as an inspectorate to the Supreme Judicial Council that operates outside its mandate. This is not the case in Romania, but Ms. Chiș was sharing with the Bulgarian participants how the situation in Romania is with their Superior Council of the Magistracy and with the independence and effectiveness of the magistracy there. So we can start by you explaining to us how a judge can become a member of the Superior Council of the Magistracy. What is the procedure? You were there for 6 years. How did you become a member? Please.
In Romania, we are elected by our peers. The Superior Council of Magistracy has a constitutional base, and the Constitution says that it is compounded by 19 members, and 14 out of 19 are judges and prosecutors elected by their peers. 3 are ex officio members, the President of the High Court, the General Prosecutor, and the Minister of Justice. And we also have 2 lay members, representatives of the civil society, appointed by the Romanian Senate. Speaking about the elected members, we are 9 judges and 5 prosecutors from all the level of the courts and the prosecutorial offices attached to the courts. I was an appellate court judge by the time I became a member of the council, so I was elected by appellate court judges. If you want to become a member of the council, you have to prepare an application, and the council in place will register it. You can have a campaign, you can meet with your colleagues all around the country.
Is it you that organize the campaign? You arrange all your meetings during the campaign?
Yes, you are the one, but the presidents of courts are obliged to assure you the conditions to meet your colleagues. I have to tell you that the process is a bit more complicated than it seems at a first glance, because it has 2 rounds. The first round is at a local level. In each appellate court, we have 15 as a total and 16 with the military appellate court. And in each court, you can nominate a basic court judge, a district court judge, and an appellate court judge to go for the national level. So first of all, you have to be nominated by your colleagues. In case of an appellate court, by my colleagues. And if you are if you get the majority of their votes, you go further at the national level. And in this national round, you can go in each court, meet your colleagues. It could be difficult sometimes because I was the only one with a non-managerial position. I had just an executive position. I was a judge in the civil division of my court, and all my competitors were presidents of
yes,
courts.
I was going to ask this. When you say non-managerial position, you were like a rank and file judge from the appellate court.
Yes. But my competitors were presidents of appellate courts, each of them. And, having just 15 appellate court, they all knew each other with other presidents. So for them was definitely much easier to have their campaign than it was for me. And I had I would say, illuminating experience because meeting my colleagues, I found out that I was voted mostly by those who were silent in our meetings, because others asked me quite difficult questions about my opinions, about some information I should have had, and were not very friendly, I would say. But there were many judges who kept silent, and I almost could number my votes because of the silent ones. And I discovered, becoming a member of the council, that sometimes it's not an easy task to be the voice of the silence.
So how did the voting happen? Is it electronically, or how is it with paper? How the judges voted for you?
It's on paper. And you have to be present in your court. And actually, there is a calendar. And the calendar sometimes can influence the result. Because if you, for instance, put, as my council did in case of the present council, because the council, always the council organizes the elections for the next council. So my council organized the elections for the present council. And for instance, we established the first round in the holidays of children, and we had many colleagues who were parents and who planned in advance holidays with their families, and they could not be present for voting.
So this was intentionally done to lessen the number of people who voted of judges?
Yes, I wrote about this because I sustained to have another date in order to allow everybody to be present, not having this possibility to vote electronically, as you asked me.
And about the election campaign, who is paying for this? Do you receive? You are paying from your own, so there is no money allocated to cover the election campaign.
No, and you have to take some days off. It's on your expenses. Yes.
So you said that you had some difficult time during the election campaign, and I assume this difficult time also continued when you become a member of the Superior Council of the Magistracy, because you also wrote something like a report, an academical report after your mandate expired. Can you say a little bit more about the report, about the findings from this report?
Before becoming a member of the council, I was a president of a professional association of judges and prosecutors, and I was always criticizing the council, for different decisions. And I decided to become a member because I wanted to change something, to see how is on the other side. And becoming a part of the other side, I was a minority as well, criticizing the majority. So I found myself somehow in the same position. We had a difficult time in our 6 years mandate because our laws on the judiciary were changed substantially twice in 6 yees.
In your mandate?
In my mandate, yes. Consolidating what I labeled, what I entitled to be a pyramid of power. And I asked myself many times what was my role in the council, because I couldn't fulfill many of my objectives. Mostly I stopped the objectives of the majority, of the majority from being realized, or at least slowed them down. And after finishing my mandate, I discovered that maybe my role was to be there and to testify and to analyze what can happen if the power is used inappropriately. That's why I wrote a study actually it was a study, not just a simple report, in a review of the Romanian Academy. And I on purpose chose a review which was not a law review. It is actually a review on international relationships and political sciences. And I wrote the study in a way that anybody can read it.
You wanted to reach a broad audience?
Yes, for the general public. It wasn't written for the jurists. And what I analyzed there was this 2 rounds of changing our laws. The first one was in 2018, in a short time after I began my mandate. Sorry, sometimes I mix the tenses in English. These laws were heavily criticized. So in order to lift the CVM, you also had it. We were in the same boat, I would say. The political world, the parliament and the executive agreed to change again our laws in order to fulfill those objectives from the benchmarks. Yes. But unfortunately, these new laws, instead of dismantling this pyramid of power, enforced it even more. So I wrote about these functionalities, I could call them, in these 2 judicial laws. And what I criticized mostly was the way the presidents of appellate court can be used to reach certain decisions. Because as you said in the documentary, they have a huge power, including the one in changing the panels of judges, taking files from a judge and assigning it to another. Because in the last laws, the executive board is elected by the president mostly.
Which executive board?
Each court has what the law calls an executive, a managerial board.
Okay.
And before the last laws, this managerial board was compounded by the president as ex officio and judges elected by the General Assembly of Judges. But after the laws were changed in 2022 for lifting the CVM, the presidents of each decisions were ex officio members of this executive board, and just 2 judges were elected by the General Assembly of the court if the president wanted to call the General Assembly for doing this. And the presidents of the divisions were nominated by the president of the court. So actually we have a hand of people of the presidents of courts who are in charge for distributing judges in different divisions of the court, for establishing panels of judges, and for having this power to take a file from a panel, from a judge, a specific file, and redistribute it to another panel. This is what we saw in Recorder.
So these changes in the law, they shift a lot of power to the presidents of the court.
Courts.
And why? Who inspired these changes? The politicians, or did this come from within the courts, or the judges who wanted more power?
Everybody wanted changes, but in different ways, And even within the judiciary, there were 2 different directions or currents, I would say. Some of the presidents of courts, and I have to underline this. We have 3 very vocal judges associations, and their presidents are also presidents of courts. And I said, okay, the law doesn't say anything about conflicts of interest, but conflicts of interest sometimes are about good sense. And it's good sense that you cannot be a president of a court and a president of a professional association, because we don't have syndicates. But these associations have a role of a syndicate. They are the opposition to the managerial board.
They have to be the oppositions, otherwise
they should be.
They are not serving the purpose.
Yes. So and some of them were invited by this Libe Commission, if you heard about it, in the European Parliament.
Yes.
And I asked myself and them publicly, in which quality are they going there? As presidents of courts or as presidents of professional associations of judges? So these laws were supported by some of them, and not supported by others. I told you I was a minority. I wanted the laws from 2018 to be changed, but not in the way they were eventually in 2022. And we had problems with the liability of judges and prosecutors, but especially with the liability of members of the council of the judiciary. And how can be held liable disciplinary and criminally? Like we speak about disciplinary, criminally, and what we call material liability. And I criticized during my mandate constantly the way the Judicial Inspectorate did its job. Because speaking about presidents of professional associations, those who criticized the new laws were indicted, were investigated, against them were initiated disciplinary actions by the Judicial Inspectorate, while one of the others, I repeat, she was a president of a professional association, a president of a court, was asked to be a minister of justice during her mandate as a judge, even if this was eventually declared unconstitutional by the Constitutional Court. And
so it looks like this judge or some judges attempted to step on the political field and not only remain judges. We have a similar situation here in Bulgaria, with the only exception that in our country, part of the Supreme Judicial Council, which is 25 members, 11 are elected by the parliament. So we have an embedded political influence, and that is why I want to go back to your council. You said that the system is good because you are elected by your peers. And yet you wrote this study, and you are showing in the study that the system is flawed. There are a lot of flaws. How come you have a good system, but at the same time you have all these flaws in the system? What are the reasons, you think?
I think with great power should come great responsibility, and the members of the Judicial Council cannot be held responsible for their decisions. So you shouldn't give so much power in the hand of a few, because we have in our hands the career of all the judges. We have two divisions. I haven't told you about this. One for judges and one for prosecutors. And speaking about the division for judges, I was part of it. We have a very huge power above the career of all judges in the country. We actually appointed the president of the High Court. There is no political involvement in appointing even the president of the High Court in the judiciary. We appoint the judges for the High Court based on an interview. We nominate the commission for evaluating their decisions. We organize all the contest for promoting judges from a court to a higher court or in managerial positions. So it's a very huge power. We are also disciplinary section, a disciplinary court for all the judges, similar with a section for prosecutors. So we have all this power, and it it is almost impossible, even the law provides this, to be held responsible for this. For instance, we removed some judges from their judicial offices. We have a very famous one, Danileț, with this famous case on freedom of speech before the European Court of Human Rights. He was removed from his office in one of these disciplinary actions, and he won eventually before the High Court of Cassation and Justice, because you can contest this in an appeal on points of law. And many judges did this, and we had judges in criminal cases who were actually removed from their judicial positions 4 or 5 times in different disciplinary actions. Can you imagine the pressure exerted over these judges? And the High Court overturned these decisions of the council, and some of them saying that it wasn't any disciplinary breach at all, so they haven't committed anything.
So was it personal then, because the judge spoke out?
It looks like that. And even though they won that before the High Court, the president of the Appellate Court of Bucharest, with the executive board compounded by her people, moved them from the criminal division to an administrative division and didn't allow them to sit in criminal cases anymore. So this much power, and that's why I'm calling it a pyramid, because the section for judges is on the top of the pyramid. The next level are the presidents of the appellate courts. And as you saw maybe or noticed in the documentary, they are also in charge with seconding judges in executive, non-managerial positions from a lower court to a high court. So in some cases, you maybe saw my colleague Judge Laurențiu Beșu, who appeared with his face and name in the interview, and he was seconded from a district court to the appellate court of Bucharest, and he had some important cases. And the president of the appellate court did not prolong his secondment, even though he had a very important case in which he should have made a decision.
Secondment, secondment is also a very big problem in Bulgaria. We have it is within the power of the court presidents, and we have judges also in the appellate court here in Sofia, I can say, who have been seconded for more than 10 years now, and they are still seconded.
Not transferred to secure their positions.
Yes, exactly, and this makes them vulnerable to the mood of the court president. So, just perhaps one last question about the Superior Council of the Magistracy and all the examples you gave. We can basically say that to a certain extent it abused its power, being on the top of the pyramid, especially the judges.
Yes, because we have a big issue with secondments in managerial positions as well. More than 60, not 16, 60, so more than a half of managerial positions are occupied by secondments, not by appointments. And
this is a lot.
This is a lot. And the causes are because they don't organize sometimes competition.
Yes.
And even though they organize competitions, in many cases, judges don't apply because they know the results. And even the seconded president or vice president or president of division, but in case we have contests just in case of the president, don't apply for this because being seconded is sometimes easier than learning for a quite difficult exam. So it's a I would say it's a practice somehow encouraged and promoted by the section for judges of the council.
Very similar situation to Bulgaria, and also very negative, and having also a very demotivating impact on the rank and file judges, because they know, like in Romania, that if they apply and if they are not close to the court president or to somebody else, they don't have a chance to advance in the system through the competitions. So
I want to finish with the liability, because in case of criminal liability, we had some very famous cases of corruption in the judiciary while Mr. Morar or Ms. Kövesi were chief prosecutors of the National Anti-Corruption Department. So the laws were changed twice in 2018 and 2022, taking the jurisdiction from the National Anti-Corruption Department and giving it to some prosecutors chosen by the council. So the members of the council are choosing the prosecutors who can prosecute them. So can you imagine that? So this is the law now.
This is shopping.
I was criticizing that as well. So it's in theory we can be held responsible. In practice, it is, if not impossible, highly improbable.
Again, we can only draw a parallel between Romania and Bulgaria. It's just that the situation with the election of our Supreme Judicial Council is a little bit different. So your mandate expired in 2023, and you participated in this documentary, which was released in Romania in the fall of 2025. It's called Capture Justice. And there we can see a lot of Romanian magistrates, judges mainly, who are coming out with their faces and with their names, and they speak about these flaws in the system, the manipulations in the system, and how people with integrity who want to do their job in the proper way are becoming the minority as yourself. Can you tell us a little bit more how this initiative started? How did you get the invitation to participate in this movie? Was it on your initiative to take part? Just a little bit more details.
As a judge, even before I became a member of the council, I was very open to the press. I always spoke with the press when I was asked about, as a president of a professional association, as a simple judge, and of course as a member of the council. So the press, the national press, knew me. So every time I was invited, I accepted and I answered questions. The initiative definitely wasn't mine. It never was mine. Mm-hmm. I just answered invitations. In the case of this documentary, the journalist who did that had another documentary about how they did that. Unfortunately, it is not subtitled in English, so it is difficult for those who don't speak Romanian to understand it. But what they said was that some judges and prosecutors wrote them because they were a very well-known channel, and they had a good reputation among the general public. So probably that's why my colleagues, some of them, wrote to them about difficulties they experienced in courts and prosecutorial office. So they decided to do a documentary about it. They also read my study. Actually, it was reflected by the press in the time it appeared. Actually, I wrote it at the end of 2000, in the fall of 2023.
In the last year of the mandate?
After my mandate. My mandate, because I ended my mandate in January.
In the beginning.
And I took my time during the summertime. Being a professor, I didn't have time. So in the summertime, I wrote this study and I released it. I published it in the fall of 2023. So the press knew about it and reflected, but a small part of it. I wrote 30 pages. 30 pages are difficult to to read some of this. What the documentary reflected was less than 2 pages from those 30. Can you imagine that? So they asked me some questions related to what I wrote there, and they tried to investigate probably more directions and managed to do this in these 4 files they spoke about in the documentary. And the whole process was very difficult. I was interviewed at the beginning, somewhere in the spring of 2024, and the documentary was released almost a year and a half after, in the fall of last year, in 2025. So it was a huge and elaborate work to gather all those information, and
because it collects a lot of information with a lot of data, just to make the connection between the cases, what the judges are talking about, and the whole situation with the captured justice in Romania.
And unfortunately, the judiciary is very opaque. You saw that the Appellate Court of Bucharest refused to give the decisions of the board based on which they changed the judges from a panel, or took files from a judge and give it to another. Even though, in my opinion, these decisions should be published on the site of the court, should be put in the files in order to allow the parties to exercise their right to defense. Because in some cases you should be able to recuse the judge if she or he was changed.
Yes, this is very interesting moment, because in Bulgaria all such decisions and all the papers are public. There is an electronic system where, if you know the number of the case, you can find it, and depending on your role in the procedure, you have certain level of access. So even if as a regular citizen, I can just open, it's anonymized, but I can still read the reasoning, I can still read the decision and so forth. But I'm surprised that this is not the case in Romania.
We have a system called the Portal of Courts on the site of the Minister of Justice, and you can find there all the files before the court.
It's on the site of the Minister of Justice?
With the name of the parties as well. Mm-hmm. And you can see what happened in each trial, and the final and the decisions. And we have terms, I don't know how to call them, when you summon the parties, and
a subpoena.
Yes, so you can see everything, yes, as a general public, what happened before a court, but you cannot see the reasons. We have a different program called Just on the site of the Superior Council, and you can find there the decisions of the courts, except the High Court decisions, but you cannot access them using the name of a party, even though they are public, or the number of the file. So you can see what happened, but you cannot see the motivation for what happened. You cannot match the portal with Regis.
The motivation is not public, that's what...
It is public, but you cannot find it, Because if for instance, on Rejust, you want to see the jurisprudence in corruption cases, and you put this word,
search,
yes, and you will have a lot of decisions, but you cannot say that this decision was pronounced or taken in this file, because I want to know, there were names in the documentary. What is the reasoning in case of Mr. Vanghele, for instance? Vanghele. No, you cannot see that. Even if it is on the site, but you cannot match the file with the motivation. And
this is very interesting, and I can say in Bulgaria we are one step ahead, because
it was made on purpose, because before we had a better system, a more transparent. My council changed that. That's why I wrote that study. I wrote about
this was one of the findings.
This was another finding
for the worst and not for the better.
And speaking about the decisions of the executive board to changing the panels, before they were obliged by a regulation adopted by the council, because we are in charge with secondary legislation. on the justice laws. And in the previous regulation, they were forced to put the decision which changed the judge in a panel in the file to allow the parties to see the reasons.
Yes.
Now the regulation was changed. It says nothing about this obligation, and the president of the court, after the documentary, held a press conference saying that we cannot put these decisions in the files because we speak about pending trials. So it's not the general public is not allowed to see that, but not even the parties. What is secret about?
Is it possible for somebody to appeal this regulation in this text so it can be changed again?
There is no text. We just took out the text with the obligation, so there is no text. It's very funny.
Yes, very, very interesting. So this movie was really very bold. A lot of people in Bulgaria also watched it. Were there or are there any consequences now for you or for some of the judges who spoke so openly in that movie? What was the follow-up on an institutional level and also among the magistrates?
Well, the President of the Republic called
Yes.
the judges for a meeting, and he had some public.
The judges who spoke in the
All the judges and
all the
prosecutors.
judges.
He asked all the judges and prosecutors who want to speak with him to do that, in a meeting. And there was a public meeting, and he met in private with some of them who.
The president of Romania.
The president of Romania. And the public you can find the recording of the public meeting on the site of the presidency. And there were colleagues others than those in the documentary. We didn't go because we said what we had to be said in our opinion already in the documentary, but other colleagues went and spoke about other things which we couldn't touch in the documentary.
So they also shared insights.
And the president made of course his staff prepared a report on what was discussed in these meetings and the emails he received from judges and prosecutors signaling problems in courts and prosecutorial offices. So and he also said that he will organize a so-called referendum to ask the judges about their trust in the superior council. He haven't done it as far as I know it. The other initiative was one of the prime minister who organized a committee inviting some NGOs who fight for human rights, the professional associations of judges and prosecutors, the Superior Council of Magistracy, and the High Court President to discuss the necessary changes in the laws in order to prevent things like those the documentary revealed. The council refused to go. They were once, and they said we don't want to be part in this anymore. But one of my colleagues from the section for judges, the only one who represents the opposition in the council,
The minority again,
was in the last meeting and expressed her opinions about how the law should be
So this
changed.
committee is still functioning?
As far as I know, this committee has just finished its work, and the Prime Minister asked the Minister of Justice to draft a
Changes?
law.
Changes and amendments to the law.
To the laws based on the conclusions of these commissions. Yes.
So you've mentioned there was a reaction from the President of Romania. There was a reaction also from the Prime Minister. Was there a reaction from within the system?
Yes. The chief inspector made a report, and I criticized that publicly.
Report on what?
On the documentary. She
Interesting.
She entitled it Report on Verifying What the Documentary Says. And you know, this report is like a nice story written in an office, because she didn't check anything. She didn't even went to the court to ask the judges who spoke.
So it's like a review of the documentary.
Yes, it's like a review. Yes, she expressed her own opinion, and more than that, she was biased, because before preparing this report, she had an interview on a judicial site, and labeled the judges and prosecutors who appeared in the documentary as being frustrated and expressing their own frustrations and subjective views on what's happening in some files. And what the documentary said is were isolated cases and not systemic problems. So she expressed her views. And after expressing her views, she prepared this report. And actually, the chief inspector cannot make verifications, him or herself. A judicial inspector should do that. And the chief inspector can just validate, confirm, or not the report made by another inspector. She didn't do that. She did that all by herself. And I told you, it was a storytelling, her own opinions, and even tried to put everything in the context, because you know, the council itself, the judicial inspectorate, the president of the High Court, tried to to release this idea that was a whole conspiracy behind this documentary. Some dark forces did that. You know,
just diminishing
there is no documentary in this world who could have such a huge impact, because it had more than 5 million visualization in a few days, if things were not being so obvious. Because you know, yes, it was like in Don't Look Up. I don't know if you watched that movie with Meryl Streep, Don't Look Up. It's about a meteor approaching the Earth, and the Earth was in danger to be hit and destroyed. And if you look up on the sky, you could see the meteor coming. Yes. But the president of the USA said, don't look up, listen what we say, and nothing is going to happen. Actually, it happened.
We are living in a similar situation at the moment, if we want to put this in the global perspective.
So it was like, don't look up, because for everyone it was obvious that we had problems, because in high corruption cases involving politicians, important businessmen, we assisted to decisions which either absolved them, acquitted them, or established a statute of limitation. That was the problem with changing the panels, because every time you change a panel in a criminal case, the whole procedure is starting all over again.
Very common, yeah.
So yes, everybody saw that for a few years now. What the documentary did, because of some judges, including me, was to explain the mechanism behind the decisions.
And in such compressed form, you can really see how these internal mechanisms are actually working to protect certain businessmen or certain political figures.
I myself am a professor of procedure.
Yes.
And I said once in a conference that the legislator uses a neutral language usually, but in case of some appeals, he used this word extraordinary appeals, which is highly unusual. We don't use the word extraordinary in our everyday language, just very rarely. Why are these appeals extraordinary? Because there are limited cases in which they can be
and should not become the norm.
Yes, but the general public is not blind. They say that even in cases we had final convictions, speaking about the DNA files, in extraordinary appeals, after many years, some politicians, some businessmen were acquitted.
Yes. So how you mentioned the general public? How did the general public react to the movie?
They protested. They were even though it was very cold because it was winter, December. Yes. They protested before the courts. For instance, in Cluj, the protests were held before the appellate court, and in Bucharest, of course, before the High Court of Cassation and Justice, asking for the resignation of the president of the High Court.
Will she do this? Will she resign?
No, definitely not.
What can you predict about this?
It's the first time when the procedure of appointing a president of a high court is challenged before the court by an NGO defending human rights, the CLIC. So there is a pending case. And what do you think? The council, because the council appointed her, asked the high court presided by this judge, to move the file from Cluj Appellate Court, I was judging the Cluj Appellate Court, to another court. And guess what? It was moved in a court, in a neighbor court, Alba Court. And the president of the council now is the president of Alba Court.
So there should be recusals, perhaps.
I don't know. I'm just thinking about some coincidences, because the report of the chief inspector says there were just some temporary coincidences in these files. Is nothing systemic. And as we say in Bulgaria,
sometimes the temporary things are becoming the most stable things.
And coincidences are usually not by accident.
And you said that this report is like a review, but does it have any legal weight, any legal meaning?
Actually, it has, because the section for judges approved it with 2 votes against. And these 2 votes...
So it was presented to the section of judges and the Superior Council of Magistracy?
Yes, and in a public meeting, because the meetings of the council are public, and they are broadcasted on the site of the council, and you can still watch them anytime you want. So you can see that some irregularities were pointed out by these 2 colleagues. One was this, that the chief inspector is the only one who signed the report. The other is that there were no annexes at first. These decisions of the executive board were not before the council, just when the council asked for them. And when my colleagues read these decisions, they said, yes, we read one thing in the decisions and another thing in the report. So there is a problem. You should correct these mistakes. And still, the council, without correcting those mistakes, we don't know if there are mistakes or they were made by purpose, approved this report. So consequences could be disciplinary actions against the sitting judges and prosecutors who appeared in the documentary. That could be a consequence. We'll see.
And what do you think, stepping aside from this particular situation, what do you think that in general the society and also the politicians or the legislators should do to improve the system, to be really able to guarantee its independence? Is it a problem of the legislation? Is it a problem of the human factor? So the people who own a certain leadership positions, as we call them, is there is not a perfect solution. There is no panacea. But what do you think should we all do as society to be able to have independent judicial system, an effective one?
I think a bit of everything. Because you saw that the National Anti-Corruption Department had some results.
Yes. Bulgaria was looking up to Romania because we don't have that.
Some final convictions now overturned some of them in these extraordinary appeals. But after having such convictions against high politicians. We have a former prime minister, we have ministers,
Yes.
we had members of the parliament, we had presidents of
And not only former ones, some of them were
in the office.
acting.
Yes,
Yes.
former, I mean, yes,
Yes.
now former. Yes. It's somehow, I'm not saying it's normal, but history shows that we are in a spiral. We don't stay in the same place. So when the judiciary becomes too independent, I would say too independent in the view of the other powers will try to take back their power and to control the judiciary. So it's always the struggle. So it's always the political world who will try to do that, and we should resist this. It is very difficult because you will always find some judges and prosecutors who probably gladly would cooperate with the political world. And I spoke in my study about a Trojan horse, but actually it is more than a Trojan horse, because a Trojan horse is something coming from outside. But actually we have it inside. And if the inside enemy is the council itself, the council is the guardian of independence. So who's watching the watchers? Speaking about the responsibility of the members of the council, it's very difficult. But of course, as I said, for now we need some changes in our legislation, and this is the first one. And for improving the public trust, which has the lowest level ever, we have 25% of trust.
In Bulgaria, even less. Especially in the prosecution.
Yeah, it's very low. Anyway, it's very, very, very low. We have to be more transparent. So force the Board of Appellate Courts to publish their decisions, have the motivation of each decision available to the general public. So having because I'm studying psychology, and a way to study somebody is by observing him or her or a group or something. And when you know that you are observed, speaking about CVM as well, your behavior is changing, you are more attentive to what you do. So transparency is definitely a solution. And of course, another solution is to break this power, this pyramid of power, to distribute the power, to give it to more people locally, and change the components, the composition of the executive boards of the courts, and allow the general assemblies of judges and prosecutors to elect them. In this way, I'm not saying maybe we will improve things, we will not. But in this way, each judge and prosecutor becomes responsible for the way his or her court and prosecutorial office is administered. So I think these are the...
We all have to invest efforts and join forces to try to guarantee this independence of the judiciary.
And speaking about the general population, because many people from the general public ask me, yes, but how can we help? We should do everything we can, which stays in our power to change things. So I don't know. We can speak about it. We can speak about it on social media platforms. We can go out and protest. But the most important thing, we should go and vote. Because speaking about political world, the political world can be held responsible politically. So you can punish at least the politicians.
This is a very important
using
message, because as I told you earlier, Bulgaria will be having a snap elections in April to vote for a new parliament, and after that hopefully a new government. So it is really very important to vote, and I hope that we'll have a bigger turnover and not the 38% we had back in October of 2024. Just one last question we have discussed before starting our conversation. I told you about a very tragic situation in Bulgaria, literally in the last couple of days, about these 6 men, one of them a boy, another young man. The bodies were found, first 3 of them in a hut up in the mountains, and then the other 3 in a camper, perhaps committing suicide. And the very awkward reaction of the Bulgarian institutions here, especially the prosecution, kind of blaming these dead people who cannot protect themselves for doing what they have done and for being what they were. I don't know if you had such a situation in Romania with such a harsh murders and homicides, but what in a similar situation or in such situation, you as a professional, as a lawyer, and also as a human being, what do you think should be the public position of the institutions of the court or even of the prosecutors and the investigators, not to provoke an additional hate to people who cannot protect themselves anymore?
Well, we have this freedom of speech, even though we are judges and prosecutors, but we should use it responsibly. And especially when we speak about a managerial position, a chief prosecutor, a president of the court, he or she should be aware that represents an institution. Even in case of a so-called simple judge or prosecutor, you have to be aware that what you say can be reflected on the image of the justice as a whole. So, speaking about this case, we should not use labels. I saw a judge in Romania labeling people as for their sexual orientation, for instance. It is totally forbidden for a judge to do that. You cannot label communities. Being a professor, I was asked by my students, preparing them for this very serious exam for the National Institute of Magistracy. You have one here because I was invited once and I know. They asked me, can a judge have prejudices or a prosecutor? I think there is no person without prejudices.
It's part of our nature.
Yes, but you have to be aware of your prejudices. One, that's very important, and recuse yourself in such cases. And second, if your prejudices affect communities, you shouldn't be a judge or a prosecutor. So if you are, a bigot, and you hate people from a different nationality, or you have prejudice for, or for foreigners, or for women, or for men, or for gay people, you shouldn't be a prosecutor or a judge, because you don't have the profile required for such a position, because you cannot stay in files of these people. And we don't speak about exceptions, we speak about whole communities.
Ms. Chiș, I thank you very much for your time and for our conversation.
I thank you for inviting me and for your very interesting questions, and I hope I was helpful for your general public. Thank you.
Thank you very much.